Hey everybody, today we'll be answering the question of why did Path of Exile 1's development completely cease? So Path of Exile 1, in a video recently released by, well, the Path of Exile 1 developers, has not had anyone developing the game for about 6+ months now. In addition to that, they do not intend to have anyone working on the game for up to several months from now, which is why this video exists. Why? Why is that? Why did everyone stop developing Path of Exile 1? So let's talk about a few things here right at the start of this video to catch everybody up to date. Path of Exile 1 is a Diablo-like game. It is an ARPG. These games primarily survive by having new leagues, new seasons. Leagues and seasons are basically the same thing. They don't mean exactly the same thing, but for this video, they're the same thing. So every 3 to 4 months, a new league comes out, a new season comes out that resets everybody to level 0, adds a new fresh economy, adds some mechanics, and everyone gets to play through the game again, experiencing the game again from level 1. Path of Exile 1 has not had a new league for quite some time now, for half a year about. The developers made it seem like Path of Exile 1 would have a new league up pretty soon after Path of Exile 2's release, but since then they have, through this video, canceled their plans. Of course, the Path of Exile 1 community did not take this very well. They are very upset knowing that their game, which they thought might take 6 months to get a new league, might actually take a year to get a new league. It's not really good information to have. So I looked through a lot of things. This is not going to be a short reaction video. I'm not just going to watch this video and then we comment for like a minute or two. I actually looked into a lot of different reasons, asking myself the question, why did a game studio drop their flagship game? Now, of course, you can say they dropped it for a sequel, but the sequel seems to have also been rushed and not really in a position where it can fully replace the game that it was meant to replace. And I'm asking why? Why did Path of Exile 1 have its development cease? So to start this video, I'm going to do an I was right moment. Jonathan, this guy over here, in a very long discussion piece they had earlier, he said a comment that was a giant red flag to me. Those of you guys who've been watching me for a while probably know what that comment was, because I am always right. And I will always be right. For this video, I'm very much, let's say, a pessimistic person, and I enjoy ruining things for people, and that will kind of be what this video is. So I just kind of enjoy doing that. It makes me happy inside. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment down below on any thoughts you have. Everything I have will be backed up by information or anything, so I'm not talking out of my ass. Some of this information might not make you guys happy, but here we go. So Jonathan here said a comment in this video wherein he said he didn't know it would take so much time to port assets from Path of Exile 1 to Path of Exile 2. That was confusing to me because developers should know, at the very least good developers should know, that going from one game engine to another game engine can be a very time-consuming process. Now, while they are a modified version of the same game engine, they are still using technically different engines that can make this stuff very time-consuming. PoE developers seem to not understand core development issues, having only worked on PoE 1 forever. Amongst those core development issues are that changing to a new game engine is one of the most traumatic events you can have while developing a game. 3 of the biggest and well-known development hell games of all time were caused by swapping to new engines. While PoE 2 might be on the same engine, it's an updated engine which has been causing way more issues than they want to admit. So let's go through 3 different games right now. Of course, we have everyone's favorite Duke Nukem Forever. Duke Nukem Forever constantly swapped its game engine, and each time its game engine was swapped, they lost a lot of development. In June 1998, 14 months after announcing that they would use the Quake 2 engine, 3D Realms announced they had swapped to the Unreal Engine. Broussard said that Duke Nukem Forever would not be significantly delayed and would be back to where it was at E3 within a month to 6 weeks. Yeah, that obviously wasn't true. We have everyone's second favorite development hell game, Daikatana, which by modern perspectives actually wasn't really in development hell for that long, but it's kind of funny thinking about that in retrospect. He decided to license the new Quake 2 engine to stay ahead of the competition, but there was one problem. id Software contract specifically stipulated that a licensee couldn't use the new engine until id's game was released in December 1997. The same time Daikatana was scheduled to release. The switch forced Ironstorm to scrap 11 months worth of development. And of course, everyone's other favorite development hell game, Star Citizen. Why did Star Citizen have to kind of redo everything? Well, they swapped from one branch of a game engine to another branch of a game engine. They were using the Star engine, which of course is a modified version of another engine, the Lumberyard engine. That's Amazon Lumberyard. Now, of course, both of these are two branches off the CryEngine, but if you swap from one branch to another branch, this is going to be a lot of development time. So they lost a lot of progress. These are 3 different games that show that, yeah, actually, this is a pretty common issue with game developers, that they think that for some reason that swapping to different game engines won't be that big a deal. So of course, let's watch some of this video here to get some more information.
PoE 2 was delayed 3 weeks, making the problem even worse. And then after the game was released, well, of course we had to immediately deal with all the problems. How could we think about making a PoE 1 expansion when we still have hundreds of thousands of people who are having bad experiences in PoE 2? There are crashes, there are severe in-game balance problems. How could I justify taking some of the most experienced developers we have off PoE 2 when it's on fire? Now, after the Christmas break, we had to really admit something to ourselves. The most urgent priority was getting PoE 2 to a point where it didn't have major issues. And it's hard to even think about what PoE 1 needs when PoE 2 has really obvious problems that need fixing. We needed to get it to the point of stability and balance, and to fix the most severe deficiencies that PoE 2 has before we can take our eyes off it. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we can't really work on PoE 1 3.26 until PoE 2 0.2.0 has shipped.
Now, of course, he does specify here, and of course, you can understand that this means nobody is working on Path of Exile 1. Some people thought that Path of Exile 1 would get at least a new season, maybe without new mechanics, just a fresh reset, maybe some dumb mechanics, maybe not that much content, but nobody thought, of course, that it would just get nothing, that it would just be abandoned, effectively. Additionally to that,
and being honest, we probably need to support that for a couple of weeks after that as well. Now, in the meantime, we are going to get a bunch of pre-production done on 3.26 with whatever people who are not needed to fix issues with PoE 2. And once 0.2.0 is sorted, I promise we will devote as many resources as are needed from our company to get 3.26 done as soon as possible. Unfortunately, I just can't promise a date right now.
Watching this video, I see a lot of
how this went down. Honestly, I should have predicted the fact that taking the PoE 1 team off PoE 1 would lead to this outcome.
Wait, what? We'll go over that in a second. So there's a lot of things in this video that are very confusing to me. This guy, Jonathan here, he just says things like, as we said here earlier, he didn't really understand that swapping to a new game engine and porting over all your assets would take a lot of time. Then over here he says, and I quoted this because I couldn't believe it, honestly, I should have predicted that taking the PoE 1 team off of PoE 1 would lead to this outcome. I don't really know how to respond to this statement. I don't like just dogpiling on people, but like, what? I don't actually know a different way to like react to this. He didn't know. Okay, I'm sorry, but like he didn't know that taking the Path of Exile 1 team off of Path of Exile 1 would lead to the outcome of Path of Exile 1 not having development. Like, it's such a weird statement. Okay, like, I appreciate they're being really open and honest, and they're like telling people, hey man, we're just not working on your game, like, stop asking us, right? But at the same time, it's also like, what the heck just happened? Why did all this happen? And that's this video. So let's continue to go into this, okay, further and further. Path of Exile 1 has completely, Path of Exile 2 has completely surpassed expectations for player count. Both the amount of players who have bought into the game and the player retainment seem to be far above what any developer expected. This game has surpassed Diablo 4 by such a large margin, it's worth talking about. Okay, I wanna actually go, and I want to take this one right here. I want to take this comment here because I just realized in my head it would be better to paste it like this. Developers are obviously competing with each other for control over the ARPG space. Despite Diablo 4 selling well on release, all data, meaning press releases, on their player count stopped within a week of the game launch. Now, of course, if you're in marketing or anything like that, you're going to continue to brag about how big and awesome and amazing your game is, right? But I noticed something. All press releases and all information about Diablo 4 within 1 week of the game's launch, nobody bragged it up or hyped it up at the company anymore. People would big this game up if it was really continuing to do that well. But it seems to me, and many other people, that upon seeing the gameplay and upon seeing the reviews and all that, that many people just stopped buying and stopped playing Diablo 4. This means the marketing department no longer had anything to brag about. Diablo 4 does not seem to be this massive success that some people think it is, but rather is a wounded dog that GGG wants to put out of its misery for good. So I don't just say this out my ass. I have compared, now of course, Diablo 4 is on battle.net, so we can't really get that much information on it, but upon all public information, Diablo 4 has been completely dwarfed by Path of Exile 2 by an amount that would shock you. So let's look at some of this information right here. By the way, the reason I'm going to be so salty to Diablo 4, this guy said here, more players want to destroy content versus the grind in PoE 2. I asked the question, not from any data I've seen from was what you said true. Quite the opposite, in fact. Can you back up that claim at all? I got downvoted for that 5 days ago for asking for a claim that more people seem to enjoy Diablo 4 than Path of Exile 2. I got downvoted for that. Just could you source? Could you find any source for that? And that's kind of why I'm so salty. I'm gonna call myself vengeful here. Why did you downvote me for asking a question, Diablo 4 subreddit? But anyway, let's go look at it. Let's look at Diablo 4. Here, let's look at their Twitch statistics here. I'm going to look at their Twitch tracker, okay? We can see here that Diablo 4 peaked really hard on release and has not maintained even a halfway decent viewer base since then. Even on new seasonal content, the game barely gets any views. No one seems to really talk about that. Even on the release of their expansion, it did kind of sort of decent for a little bit, but then got completely destroyed. The new seasonal release has barely generated any views. There's not any information on their trick tracker to show that people are continuing any interest to watch this game. Even once we go here, and I can personally just go load this up right now, we can see Path of Exile 2 has double the view count to Diablo 4, despite the fact that, and I can just refresh this just to be sure. Yes, even now here in the middle of the night, more people are interested in Path of Exile 2 2 months after a season comes out. They're still way more interested in watching that than a new Path of Diablo 4 season. I will continue here. As we go on to YouTube, we can see even on YouTube here, which of course, it gets about a third of the views as Twitch and has the worst goddamn UI you've ever seen in your life. So hold on for a second. Path of Exile 2 still has 2.3 thousand watching it worldwide, whereas Diablo 4 is so unviewed, it is not even showing up for me. Where is it? I think it's here, 600, so just nothing. I then compared, of course, their YouTube channels. Diablo 4 YouTube channel is getting 3.3 thousand monthly subs, whereas Path of Exile is getting 9.5 thousand. So, of course, we have the metric that they get significantly less views on Twitch, they get significantly less subs on YouTube, and in addition to that, as I continue to compare through different videos and things like that, you probably notice Crip over here. I don't have that right in front of me, but you can just go look yourself. Crip and many other YouTubers, I looked at a lot of them. On average, their Diablo 4 content gets about a fourth of the views of Path of Exile 2 content, even to this day, even with the launch of a new Diablo 4 season. I decided to even look through this here, right here. Of course, this is only looking at Steam charts, not battle.net charts, but even on Steam charts, we can see right here that Diablo 4 spiked its interest, let's call it that. It spiked interest really hard on the expansion launch, but the new season launch has not kept up with that at all. We can also see the new season hasn't even kept up interest from the last seasons. So Diablo 4's interest continues to wane off, even with new expansions, even with new seasons. Path of Exile, on the other hand, for those of you guys who don't play ARPGs, this is more so what an ARPG player retainment chart shows right here. So like here's Path of Exile 1, let's look at 6 years. You can see player counts go up, down, each season, up, down, up, down. The fact that Path of Exile 2 has managed to maintain this much of a player base months into a season is frankly bizarre. That is phenomenal. Lastly, I decided to see maybe if there's some difference in interest from subreddits. Screw it. So we can see Diablo 4 is 600 people on their subreddit, whereas Path of Exile 2 currently has 1.7 thousand. Now you might say, oh, well, maybe that's because Diablo 2 had that new video launched, and no, I assure you, these are actually underselling the amount. It's normally 3 or even 4 times as much. I've checked multiple times throughout the days. The Path of Exile 2 subreddit, not even Path of Exile 1 and 2, only the Path of Exile 2 subreddit maintains about triple to quadruple the interest of the Diablo 4 subreddit, which is to say, by all observable metrics, and I have looked at every observable metric just to put this debate to rest here, okay? By every observable metric, Path of Exile 2 is completely obliterating Diablo 4. 2 months out of its launch almost now, it is still obliterating Diablo 4. Diablo 4 does not, as I say this again, seem to be this huge runaway success that people simply aren't talking about. It doesn't really seem to have many people interested in it at all, and being that it is currently perceived as being the top dog of the ARPG space, it would make sense that a company would want to put all their effort onto the new game that could finally kill them and take over the head and become the new best ARPG. Now, who would do that? Of course, a company who owned another company would really be interested in their game being the best. Well, Path of Exile's both 1 and 2 developing company is Grinding Gear Games. Jonathan Rogers, Christopher Wilson, and Eric Olofsson have all sold their shares in the company last year. Grinding Gear Games is now wholly owned by Six Joy Hong Kong. It is extremely likely and obvious that their holding company would request that they focus on their new game rather than continue development on their old stuff. Now, don't just take my word for that. I did look into this because New Zealand, of course, has this public company right here. We can see that the ultimate holding company is, of course, Six Joy Hong Kong Limited. We can see that although the board of directors does list these other people, there is other information we have here. Yes, that is right. We can see in a decision in 25th of March, let me try that one more time. The 25th of March, let me try that one more time. 25th of March, 2024. There we go. Christopher John Wilson, Jonathan Woodfull Rogers, and Eric Tor Olfesson sold all shares in the company. That is right. They have been removed as shareholders, with now 100% of the shares is Tencent. Woohoo! So, yeah, actually, a lot of people don't know this, but yes, March of last year, surprisingly, the last time Path of Exile 1 was getting any development towards it, all the current directors of the company sold all their shares off completely. This is public information. You can go look this up on New Zealand right here. I did that myself. It does appear that for now, I did look at the board of directors. It does seem that Chris Wilson is still on the board of directors for now, but to be honest, it's very odd to me, let's say that way, that he hasn't shown up in public in quite some time and seems to be very detached from the project. Of course, there was a new board of directors added in the 9th of August 2023, who currently resides within China. In other words, what is my point in all this? It does not seem, or it's not even that it doesn't seem, no, Grinding Gear Games currently has a 0% ownership in their own company. They're completely owned by Tencent, completely. Their board of directors have sold all shares. This isn't really an opinion. This is just a fact. I looked this up. You can look this up yourself. Okay. Just for the record, the last Path of Exile 1 League was finished after the owners of the company sold out, and since then, no development has been made. In addition, it appears Path of Exile 2 was rushed out in a state that does not seem the developers intended. So, all I can say with this one is that from all observable purposes, I don't really like sounding like a conspiracy theory person, but from all observable records that we can see here, all the owners sold out of the company. Path of Exile 1 did one last league, now has no content on it being worked on whatsoever. All developers were shifted out to Path of Exile 2, which was then released in a somewhat rushed state that even the developers themselves, by their own admission, do not think is in a good state. So do 2 and 2 together in your head on that one. PoE 2's late game does not seem to be hitting the mark for players on what they wanted, with such a ludicrous initial player burst and then player retention. That's important, the player retention. It makes sense that the developers are working at 110% to match player expectations to keep momentum rolling. I will make video on I will of course make a video on the issues of Path of Exile 2. I'll do that later, but I wanted to do this one for now. I kind of put that one later on. I'll get some developers on the other video after this one's done. I assure you. Okay, I will get that video out. Okay. All of this combined obviously means that Path of Exile 1 is being sacrificed in order to allow GGG to make Path of Exile 2 the kind of game that can keep and maintain this absolutely massive player base. Now, I did go through here, and these were some threads that I saw on Diablo 2. I did look through here just to answer this question because I am a spiteful person. Diablo 2 itself was constantly upvoting content and videos on saying that Diablo 4 was just too easy. Did I say Diablo 4 was upvoting and stuff? This is kind of what I was looking at when I was here. In addition to that, the do you want a slowed down endgame like campaign? This on the Path of Exile 2 subreddit. I'm just going to go vote and get to the answers here. We can see that, yes, 56% of the player base wants it slowed down. 38% of the player base likes the zoomy zoom of Path of Exile 1. So it very much does seem, based on this information here, and of course their internal polls will have this stuff way better here. Their internal polls will, of course, be showing this information way better than we can pull on a website. But I did talk about this in my last criticism video. It does very much seem that the players want significant changes to the late game. And then, of course, I have here, this was asked 1 year ago. Saw this in another post, and I just wanted to ask if cease director in New Zealand means that a person stepped down. Chris Wilson, of course, himself responded, I haven't stepped down as director of GGG, but there's a paperwork mistake where I was missed off the list when the annual return was filed this week. We complained about it yesterday, and it should be corrected in the next few days. Later on, after that, he went on to sell all his shares in the company. So it does seem, especially with Chris Wilson not really being at the forefront, that he doesn't really seem to be interested in this game anymore. He doesn't really seem to be interested in the company anymore, or else he'd be there in videos and stuff like that. He'd be talking more often. He wouldn't have mysteriously vanished and then gotten back on the board of directors after people complained. And of course, obviously, he wouldn't have sold his shares. So why did Path of Exile 1 stop being developed? Why? It's actually not that complicated of an answer. They were bought out by another company. They ceased development of Path of Exile 1 to work on Path of Exile 2. The developers probably had the intention that once Path of Exile 2 was launched, that they would go back and continue to work on Path of Exile 1. Certainly if Path of Exile 2 wasn't successful or had less success, or its player retention charts weren't kind of like breaking ARPG everything. And just to be clear, this isn't like, some people think that this player retention is like, oh, but it was a new game. Player retention, even for new ARPGs, dips down. You can see this is October, November, December. So like, let's look over 3 months here. Yeah, I mean, the player count for Path of Exile 1 dipped down considerably, whereas the player count for Path of Exile 2, if we're comparing it since the Giga launch, it's doing very well in player retention for ARPG norms. Certainly, if we look at, well, we can't really look at Diablo 4, but I suspect their chart doesn't look this good. So basically, my idea here is that yes, it very much does seem that, well, to be blunt, this game has completely surpassed expectations. It's very likely that this company is being directed by their owners that don't go back to Path of Exile 1, sit on Path of Exile 2. You need to do that. If I was in charge of this company, I would also say that. To be fair, I would also say, well, screw Path of Exile 1. Let's make this other thing work. This other thing's doing way better, right? So that's all I have to say. That's this video. Do you agree with me on anything? I think I backed all this up. It just seems to be a very simple case of they got bought out. The developers who kind of had Path of Exile 1 as their darling have moved on. The developers who are working on Path of Exile 2 are continuing to work on it. And one last thing I do want to say, in these sorts of situations for developers, being assigned to Path of Exile 1 is not luxurious or glamorous and is generally not something that people want to do. They want to keep working on the new big game that they can put on their resume and, you know, interact and kind of have it in their pocket, right? Even if they don't want to move on to a new job, it's just more glamorous to work on this big new game that has this huge player base, right? Like, that's just more glamorous to do than to go back and be the maintenance guy. No one wants to be the maintenance guy. I'm not insulting the maintenance guy. We need maintenance guys, but I'm just saying it's just not a glamorous thing. So it's likely that, you know, if there's maybe more of a glamorous thing, then maybe some people go do it in their spare time or something. But yeah. So thank you for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.